Hey guys, this is the fifth episode of Uncontroversial Facts Only. Thank you for continuing to listen. This is Kelsey.
And I'm Corey.
We appreciate you guys giving us the time. And if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram at Uncontroversial Facts Only. On Twitter, we're Uncont Facts Only. We're most active on Instagram. You can see funny pictures or bloopers, get updates on the episode. And don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you are listening. So, Corey, what creepy story do you have for us today?
So today I have a story from this guy who posted on the alien forums. And so he says, on a night in 1989 at 3 a.m. exactly, I realized I was paralyzed and someone was in my room. A magnetic sound slowly woke me up. I was on my bed and I could see a bright white light crossing the window. It was very hard to turn my head to see the clock. It took so much power. I could never remember more than this. In December 2017, I had the opportunity to try regression hypnosis. I hoped to discover more what had happened in 1989. During the session, my body was shaking so much. I did not understand why. My voice was different during the whole session, and I spoke very slowly and periodic, the opposite of how I am in life. The hypnotist said that there was a great energy crossing my body the whole time, which isn't common. After reliving some personal things, 2 minutes of silence. And finally, a face of a star friend appeared, what I believe was the great alien. I knew he was a friend, but he didn't know if I would panic. He did not take the chance. I felt myself paralyzed, and he said, "It is the protocol. It is why you cannot move. I understand the world where you are living and understand your incarnation." I feel so overwhelmed, I begin to cry. He watches me calmly. He wants to see me calm too. He doesn't want to let me get up out of bed. He said in French, "Easy, stay there, stay there. I want you to stay there." I tell him excitedly, "I would like to see your ship." I felt strange. It felt as if he could read my mind. He told me, "It is not necessary that you know. You don't need to. You need to learn how to protect yourself." He repeated this 3 times. "We will meet again. Thank you for your technical information." I can't remember under hypnotic regression our conversation about what information he was thanking me for. I feel as though a part of my memory was deleted, even under hypnosis. I know I did speak to him because in 1984, a medium informed me that I will have a friendly alien contact by telepathic communication in 4 or 5 years. So that is his experience, and what do you think about it, Kelsey?
Well, initially, I felt like it just sounds like he had sleep paralysis because you can't move,
Mm-hmm.
and then you feel like it's common to see or feel like someone's in the room.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's kind of what it sounds like. And it's hard to, like, yeah, you're paralyzed, so you can't check the time or anything. But I guess what kind of throws a wrench in that is that he also saw a medium who was like, "This is in your future." So I
I
think,
actually love that. Like, I feel like 2 supernatural worlds are colliding right here, where you have the medium talking about aliens. Like, I will actually wonder if psychics have some type of communication with like otherworldly beings too. Like, because I feel like if you have like a psychic medium who talks to the dead, like that's spirits from another world, whereas aliens are from like, another galaxy. Like, I wonder if there's a crossover between them.
I never even considered that. I guess, yeah, how would she know? So she has to have some kind of energy with them too.
Hmm.
Yeah, this story is strange, like unexpected, I think, because this has to be a really old guy also. It happened in 1989, and then he went to the hypnosis session in 2017. So, like I said, it's hard to not believe grandparents, man. So,
They've been through a lot,
yeah.
definitely. I thought it was interesting when the aliens started. Like, I wonder if it started already talking in French or it switched up. Like, maybe it was talking in English and then suddenly it switched over to French. I'm sure this guy understands French since he obviously can identify that the alien was speaking in French.
I wonder if telepathy is kind of like they're not just telling you in like the words, but they're also telling you feelings. So what if
Ooh.
he didn't understand, "I'm telling you stay there, but he felt he was telling him stay there, stay there."
do you think similarly, this guy might not even know French, but somehow through telepathy, it's like it makes you understand French?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
That is crazy. Please unlock my mind so I could pass all my OChem classes next quarter. Uh, well, yeah, so yeah, I think his story was very interesting because just like in our last episode, we talked about Betty and Barney going through regression hypnosis and how a lot of people feel that regression hypnosis could implant false memories. So I wonder if this guy is this encounter like a one-time thing for him, or has he continuously had like memories with aliens?
Yeah, that's true. And I know we took it out, but he also experienced this in the room with his wife. So I would kind of want to see her perspective too, because this is just his. So
I actually wonder if they talk about it. Like, what if they're like very like we don't ever talk about what happened that night because it could be really scary and traumatic.
yeah, no, no, wait, it is traumatic because anytime someone is like in your room that shouldn't be, that is a violation
Mhm.
of your rights to safety
Yeah.
mentally. All right. So let's get to today's topic. We're going to be talking about the Dyatlov Pass incident, and I'm just going to go right into the story. So, on January 23rd, 1959, a group of 9 Russian mountaineers set off on a level 3 expedition to explore the remote Gora or Torten mountain, whose closest inhabitants are an indigenous peoples known as the Mansi. The mountain's name has infamously been mistranslated to mean "don't go there mountain," but according to Valery Aniamov, a Mansi forest warden, it actually means mountain with swirling winds. And I just wanted to clear the record on that one because everyone uses the sensational headline of Dead Mountain, but I think it's a lie.
That would be me. I think Dead Mountain really attracted me. Be like, oh my god, why would they go to Dead Mountain? Like,
Yeah.
and they ended up dead. Oops, spoiler.
Yes. Okay. So the group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old and the most experienced of the hikers. 8 of the 9 were young university students in their early 20s. All were fairly experienced trekkers. 2 were women, and all but one perished mysteriously on the mountain. The lone survivor, Yuri Yudin, was forced to leave the group when he suddenly became ill prior to starting the climb. He returned home and was later asked to identify clothing and other material in the aftermath of the tragedy. The group's expedition was expected to last approximately 3 weeks, concluding around February 12th. When the group failed to arrive by February 20th, their families alerted the authorities and the search began. Volunteers were flown into the area. On February 26th, they located the tent and found the group's belongings within. They noticed the tent was slashed from the inside, and footprints from the 9 appeared to suggest that they were severely underdressed, wearing socks, barefoot, or single-booted. The tracks were traceable for only about 5 to 10 meters, and they were headed toward a nearby tree line. First, rescuers found 2 bodies about a mile from the camp near the trees. The bodies were barefoot, dressed only in underwear. They appeared to have died due to hypothermia. A nearby tree had broken branches that appeared to have been cut with a knife, and there had been a small fire nearby. 3 more bodies were found, including the leader Dyatlov. They were between the tree line and the camp. Based on the directional angle of the bodies, it appeared as though they may have been attempting to return to the tent. One of the bodies had a fractured skull, but all 3 appeared to have died from hypothermia. It took over 2 months for the snow to melt, and on May 4th, the last 4 bodies were finally located. They were in a gully downslope from where the first 2 bodies had been found. The autopsy determined that their deaths were caused by a traumatic force, despite no apparent outward lacerations or wounds. One body had a severely fractured skull. Another 2 had crushed ribs. They had more clothing than their 5 companions that had been discovered earlier. Yuri Yudin identified them to be wearing clothing that belonged to other climbers. Perhaps they had taken the items from the dead. Their clothes in the area appeared to be somewhat radioactive. One of the women was missing her tongue, eyes, and other soft tissue around her face. Reportedly, the bodies were unusually tan. They were described as either bright orange in color or a deep brown. Investigators used the hikers' journals and photographs to trace the trip until January 31st, when the journal entry stopped. The hikers seemed friendly, optimistic, and excited about the journey. There didn't appear to be any feuds or fights. They were a group of friends challenging themselves who just happened to come to an untimely end. The official investigation concluded that foul play was not the cause of the tragedy. In fact, they found the injuries could not be inflicted by humans, but rather a compelling natural force. In May 1959, the case was closed and the files were classified. I have the last entry of Igor Dyatlov because I feel like it's kind of his last words.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I can read it, but yeah, for me it's just like kind of poetic and sad.
I actually did not see it, so I would like to hear it too.
Yeah, I mean it's just about their trip, but I feel like it's special in that, it's the day before
Mm-hmm.
that they potentially died. And yeah, I see it as their last words because this is the last entry any of them made. So yeah, I'll read it. We're exhausted, but start setting up for the night. Firewood is scarce, mostly damp furs. We build the campfire on the logs, too tired to dig a fire pit. Dinner's in the tent, nice and warm. Can't imagine such comfort on the ridge, with howling wind outside, hundreds of kilometers away from human settlements. And that was
Mm.
Dyatlov. So,
That's a little bit morbid. Like after like knowing what happened to them and
yeah,
like seeing that last sentence with the hundreds of kilometers away from human settlements, like they
exactly.
literally whatever happened to them happened like in the middle of nowhere where nobody would really see what
Yeah,
happened.
no one could see and no one could help, So, yeah. So, in summary, it took 2 months for all the bodies to be located. 6 cause of deaths were determined to be hypothermia, 2 caused by chest trauma, and 1 fatal skull injury. So, yeah, we know something happened. So, let's talk about the theories and the evidence of what.
So we're gonna start with the most implausible theory, or to us it feels like the most implausible.
Yeah, so that would be the Yeti theory. Why does this theory exist? Well, there's like 2 main pieces of evidence that people point to say that there was a Yeti out there with them. And so the first piece is there was a loose leaf pamphlet that the hikers, it looked like they were making like for fun. It's separate from their diaries and it's full of like little tidbits about their trip. So like if they stopped in a city, they might mention it.
Hmm.
But there's a section where they wrote, according to reports, Yeti lives in northern Ural near Mount Otorten. And then in another area, they wrote, from now on, we know the snowmen exist. So people are saying that, oh, this is them saying that they saw a Yeti.
Hmm.
And then the second piece that confirms the Yeti theory is that there's actually a photo. We're going to link it on the Instagram, but there's a photo of like this dark humanoid figure standing in the snow in like a wooded area. And Corey, you've seen the picture. Do you think it looks like a Yeti?
I mean, because it's so blurry and unfocused, I feel like, yes, if you wanted to see Yeti, you could see Yeti. But do I believe that's Yeti? No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it and I look at other photos of the hike, and like a lot of people, their clothing is dark. So it kind of just looks like someone far away dressed in a bulky dark jacket and pants. And yeah, I think it was one of the hikers. And I think that the pamphlet was just like inside jokes.
Yeah, like I definitely can see like me being a very creative, imaginative person. I could see myself doing something like that, like writing a little side story about my little expedition out in the snowy mountains, and then saying, "Ooh, I saw, like the Yeti exists and it lives out here." Like it's probably just something to also keep them occupied while on this grueling journey, because you have to remember that this is like kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's like a crazy trek and all there is snow around them, so they probably had to like find humor in
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And I think what we have to keep in mind is like this was the USSR. So there was a lot of like propaganda pamphlets floating around. So it was like not an uncommon thing. Like they would have to me, it makes sense that they would be doing this on the side as like a little joke because they're
Yeah.
so used to seeing them all the time. Like
Hmm.
nowadays, you don't go camping and then you make a little inside joke pamphlet. So,
It'll just be like a little Instagram post. Saw the Yeti.
exactly. Yeah, now it would be an Instagram post. And a lot of people point to like more of the more gruesome or like the traumatic deaths. Like, oh yeah, they were being hit by some great force. That might have been the Yeti or the girl Dubinanina. So the female that had her mouth, I don't know her name. The woman that had her tongue cut out of her mouth, they're like saying that that could have been the Yeti, but I've seen that people say, why would they only take one tongue if that's what they're into, like the gourmet livers. So,
Yeah. Yeah, like, why would they gruesomely attack four of the bodies and not the rest who had died from hypothermia? So it's
yeah.
just like, unless they were like the more feisty ones,
Mhm.
the four who got beaten up badly, they were like, fighting the Yeti while the others ran. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to think about like if there was a Yeti attack, what would happen?
Yeah, and they did find some footprints, so there were no Yeti footprints. So that's like something else.
But maybe Yetis are really good at like I mean if they're like this elusive me sticking up for the Yetis right now. If they were this elusive and out there and they exist, like I feel like they would be good survivalists out there. Like they would know how to cover their tracks or something.
Potentially, but yeah, I don't know. I do not favor this theory. This one, I think it's a joke. So, yeah, it's like an inside joke for them. All right. Second theory that is really big and popular, where it seems like humans could have been involved and that they were murdered. So that is the theory that the military or the KGB, which is the Russian CIA, were responsible for their deaths. So, one thing that's kind of unexplained is, well, there are some explanations for it, but some people are unsatisfied. But there's radiation in the area. I guess there are some articles of clothing, and somebody said that on the sources that I was looking at, that the ground, like just the area in general, was slightly radioactive. So, and oh yeah, and people also say that like the tanning of the bodies could have been due to radiation.
Hmm.
So the clothing, do you want to talk about the clothing that was found?
Yeah, so they found three articles of clothing that had higher levels of radiation than the other articles of clothing. And so they found a pair of pants that had 5,000 disintegrations per minute. And I want to add that they said that for something to be considered radioactive, it has to have like at least 5,000 DPMs or disintegrations per minute. So this one just hit that threshold level, the pair of pants that they found. And then they found another sweater that had 5,600 DPMs. And lastly, another sweater that had 9,900 DPM. And what's interesting is that all these articles of clothing belonged to Krivoshenko and Gole- Koletov. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing those right. But those two guys they have a history of working with radioactive material in production plants, and so they were trying to link the high radioactivity to basically their line of work. And
Mm.
so that's just a theory that, these articles of clothing just have higher levels of radiation due to that.
Yeah, and I read that the levels of radiation were already very high and that those I guess those bodies were found in running water. So they've done studies where they put radioactive clothing into like they wash it for in cold water for 3 hours and they see how much that radioactivity decreases, and it can decrease anywhere from 30 to 60%. So these bodies were found 15 days after the ice would have melted enough for there to have been running water. So potentially they were washing for 15 days. And so the level of radioactivity that it probably started off at is like astronomically high, I think.
Oh my god. Well, like, because I'm not a scientist who knows about radioactivity levels, I want to know, like, because something is at the threshold level of 5,000, does that mean it's just like barely radioactive, or does it mean it's considered like dangerous enough to actually affect you? And like from 5,000 to 900, like, is that a big jump, or is that not a big enough jump to be like that's a crazy level?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have the answers to that, but I think if we assume that it decreased by 50%, then like the level was higher than the threshold even. So,
And that's being very considerate, like 50% decrease within 15 days of being soaked in water.
exactly. So, yeah. So there's like a lot of radiation. So people say that potentially the hikers stumbled upon something that they weren't supposed to see, and so the KGB was forced to, get take care of them. There's another theory that the two guys that had a history with like radioactive jobs, that they were actually KGB and that their mission failed and they were possibly murdered by whoever was with, or like whoever they were supposed to meet out there in this remote area.
So do you think that if that was the case, that they just dragged their friends into this mission, or like they voluntarily went with them?
I think the theory is that the friends didn't know because, they're technically university students, but they're also these KGB agents, and they do hike, and they used that as the pretense. Like, we're on this trip with our friends. The friends don't necessarily know that we have this side mission. But yeah, it does seem very strange, like something was going on, something unusual, because every single hiker almost had a camera. And this was a level 3, which is the hardest type of hike. So you generally want to pack lightly, like you're already carrying food for 3 weeks or more than 3 weeks. You're carrying your tent, you're carrying your supplies, you're carrying clothing, your skis. And so it doesn't really make sense that they would just all add a camera to their packs. And the other mystery about that is they actually were never able to find all of them. So it kind of seems like some stuff disappeared. Like maybe they took a picture of something they weren't supposed to.
Yeah. So, I mean, every time we read about this, it says the team was led by Igor Dyatlov. So it was just like, I feel like straying away from the KGB theory, because if he was the leader, I'm sure he's the one who is like pinpointing where they're going, where they're stopping, like how the trip is going to go down. And if he isn't one of those guys who had the backgrounds who work in the radioactive like production plants, then I feel like it seems like this trip wasn't meant to carry out a mission. I wouldn't know how they would covertly do that unless they influenced his decisions.
Yeah, I could see that critique because he's the one picking the path. So how can they meet with someone if someone else is picking the path?
Exactly. I mean, unless they were like, oh, I think we should stop here, or we should take this path, like
Hmm.
somehow divert the crew to go to wherever they wanted to go.
Yeah, that's true.
And also the camera thing. I feel like with the camera, it was small enough and light enough to like even just probably put in a pocket. Like, yeah, we have there's like a lot of like supplies that you have to take with you, but like, or if I'm sure even the cameras might have had like I haven't really looked, but it might have like a strap, right? So like maybe they could have put it around their neck or like on their wrist, and so it wouldn't be like too in the way.
I mean, I do agree with you that a camera itself doesn't seem like a lot, but when I'm not into hiking, I'm just saying from what I've seen, but they like count the ounces. Like you are you struggle like, should I take this pan? Should I take this cup? Because everything matters that you're carrying. Like you feel every piece.
But I feel like it seemed like they also really wanted to note everything down, because they also had like journals and diaries to like note down the trip. And
Yeah.
so I just feel like it wasn't like something they had to really, really think about if whether or not they should bring a camera or not. And also of them not being able to find it. I feel like with everything that happened, like I'm sure you're not gonna find every little thing that they brought with them.
Yeah, I mean, everything's gonna be covered in snow, but I think even to this day, there are several cameras missing. Yuri, okay, so another reason why this KGB theory is popular is that Yuri Yudin, he claims that some of the clothes that they found, he can't identify. So there's glasses, there's a piece of cloth. He says they look like they belong to a soldier or that they come from like the soldiers from, or yeah, that they come from a soldier. Like nobody in the group had glasses like that. Nobody in the group had cloth like that that looks like an army cloth or something.
Hmm. Was it found on the body or was it found like just near the site?
I'm actually not sure where that stuff was, if it originated at like in the tent or if it originated like in the tree line or something. I'm not sure, but I just know that he was told whose clothing is this? Whose clothing is this? Can you identify this? And he was just like, I haven't seen that on anybody, and he was like pretty good friends with most of them. So, he says there was stuff there that didn't belong to anyone. But to be fair, he also misidentified some things, like other family members were able to correct some of what he said.
Mm, true, yeah. But
Yeah.
maybe even like a pair of glasses, if you knew one of your friends didn't have a pair of glasses, that I feel like stands out and be like, who the hell had these glasses?
Yeah.
But also, like, I know that there were hikers, like other hiker groups in kind of like the area, not like exactly where they were, but like there were people hiking around these mountains. So it's just like, is this a path that nobody has taken before and they're the first ones? Or have there been other people there before? Because they could have, dropped or left items behind.
That's true. I think that it wasn't a common path because it was such a hard hike.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think that the odds of a random pair of glasses don't get left behind,
Mhm.
I feel like. So if you're hiking, I don't know. I just can't imagine if you have the glasses, it's because you need them. You're gonna notice you can't find them. I don't know how they get lost off of your face.
I feel like if you're in the snowy mountains, you're not gonna be wearing your glass unless you like need it like immediately, like to see anything. You need glasses, or if it was like a pair of reading glasses that you only need to like read your little diary at night or something. And so that could have like dropped, and they would have
Yes,
not
yeah.
noticed until
If you
they
have reading
actually needed.
glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it would be someone who needed glasses 24/7 because potentially they would be hiking in snowy conditions or rainy conditions and you can't see that and I can't it seems to me people would be out there who are probably farsighted, so it would be more of a reading glasses type of thing.
Yeah. And also, if it was from a soldier, let's say he wore glasses, like, wouldn't he notice that he dropped his glasses or whatever and they're just gone?
But like if you have to get out of the area because you just murdered people, then you're just like, you just got to replace those glasses.
I don't know. Everything seems a little sketch.
Yeah. But Yudin also claims that he saw documents, I don't know where, but that he saw documents that the military had opened a case on his missing friends 14 days before they were found on the tent, which would have been February 12th. And the families didn't report them until February 20th missing. So if that's true, then somebody knew something happened to them.
My question is, how the hell did he see these documents? Like, where the hell is he working to be able to get access to this?
Yeah.
Like, I hope he's not one of, like, those crazier people who are like, oh, I feel like it's military, so I'm just gonna say things to get like people to also help me look more into this.
I think that's mainly the KGB theory. Yeah, that there were potentially two agents in the group and that Yuri couldn't identify clothing and that he saw a document about it.
Mm.
So, there's like a more scientific theory, the most popular, and I don't know if any of our listeners have seen, but Dyatlov Pass has been in the news because there was new science conducted on what is known as the Avalanche Theory, and it's considered the most likely theory about what happened to them.
So in 2019, the Russian authorities revisited the incident because they wanted to link what happened that day to an avalanche, a snow slab, or a hurricane. So they believed it was more like Mother Nature had a role in their deaths. And so by 2020, the officials had concluded that a snow slab avalanche surprised the hikers when they were asleep, covered them in snow, and forced them to head over to the forest. A lot of critics did not like this theory because the first point is that there was little to no evidence that an avalanche had caused them to flee their tent. The footprints left by the group going to the forest did not look panicked and disorderly, so it seemed like when they were leaving their tent, that they had a sound mind and they knew where they were going, so they weren't just like rushing to take cover. And the traumatic injuries also did not look like it could have been inflicted by these snow slabs due to their campsite being located on a shallow slope. Do you want to say anything about that piece of information, Kelsey?
Yeah, basically, they've done a new investigation and they've discovered that the slope is not as shallow as they thought. So, traditional avalanche theory says that the slope has to be at least 30 degrees in order for it to generate the kind of force that would have been required for the injuries that they found on some of the bodies. And they had said that the slope was only at about a 15-degree angle based off of the pictures
Mm-hmm.
um, of the rescuers who were at the campsite. So, yeah, they did a new investigation and they found that it was actually 28 degrees, a lot closer than to the traditional 30-degree. Yeah, so it looks like an avalanche is possible. And an avalanche, I don't know. It seems like you said that their footprints leaving the tent was like very orderly and they didn't
Yeah.
seem panicked.
Mm-hmm.
But that to me, I mean, okay, so I don't know what's the proper way to respond to an avalanche. So I don't know if getting out of your tent and running and like being overcome with snow outside is better than being stuck inside.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's strange that they would leave.
Yeah, because I've heard that people were saying that, like, did they know an avalanche? Like, let's say that there was an avalanche, right? Did
Mhm.
they, because it would make a loud sound and they would know that something's coming towards them. And so I think that's why they were saying it wasn't panicked because they would, like, be able to see them, like, literally rushing out before they get engulfed by the avalanche.
Mm.
But maybe you're not supposed to run out there and like expose yourself to all the snow because I feel like that's a higher chance also of dying because like you're out there and what if there's like giant snow rocks out there hurling, like wouldn't that kill you?
I guess what's strange to me is that someone had the time to pick up a knife and cut the tent, but nobody else had the time to grab their clothes.
Yeah.
Like, not even to pick it up and run with it. Like, okay, maybe you don't put it on, but nobody had clothes that they, yeah, were
Yeah,
running with.
that was definitely an interesting note that they said that an avalanche wouldn't have caused them to leave essential gear and abandon their campsite altogether. Like, yeah, like let's say the aftermath of the avalanche happened, like why would they have not returned? Why did they literally go all the way to the forest and leave all their stuff back? Like
Yeah.
they could have brought food, like because there was like fried ham and meats like at their campsite. Like why didn't they bring that
Or
if they
why,
knew they were
yeah.
gonna go for like if they were trying to bunker down for a little bit?
They were less than 1 kilometer away from their camp. Why did they never return? I read that there was low visibility. So they made it to the tree line, but then if they would have started walking back, even if they knew the direction, like if they were oriented enough to know the direction of the tent, potentially they still wouldn't have been able to find it because they couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
But even then, the bodies were scattered in a way where it seemed like they were still risking going out into the elements, and they weren't all together, like in one spot.
Yeah. I mean, maybe although they're experienced, like they are also humans, so like humans obviously make mistakes, and so like if they were engulfed by an avalanche and you literally lost sight of everything, and you're just like, we need to go somewhere, find shelter, and then rethink a plan to survive. Like
Hmm.
I guess I can see them, just abandoning where they were, because I would assume that after an avalanche happened, you're not able to see like your campsite literally. Like, wouldn't there be snow covering everything?
Yeah, it was when the rescuers found the tent, they found it with only like the top of the canvas sticking out. But one of the other things that they said is that before they left, they would have, if they knew that it was an avalanche, they would have collapsed the tent
Hmm.
and thrown snow on top before abandoning it, so that way it didn't get washed away, I guess. I don't
Hmm.
know if that's the term, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting.
So to me, I don't know. It just sounds like they had time to do certain things, but not enough time to get clothing on.
Yeah. I agree, I guess, to certain aspects. Like the avalanche theory answers some questions, but not everything. And that's why I'm just like, I am not 100% for the most scientific explanation, just
Yeah.
because it still doesn't answer 100% everything that happened to them.
Yeah. So also, like them being scantily clad in clothing, there are some theories for it. So one of them is that hypothermia, basically what happens in hypothermia is that your blood vessels constrict to reduce heat loss. And if you're, freezing for a long time, eventually your muscles get exhausted. So in severe cases of hypothermia, they'll see what they call paradoxical undressing, which is like you're freezing, you're confused and delirious, and then suddenly your exhausted muscles fail and your blood vessels expand, and it makes you feel like as the blood rushes to your limbs, it makes you feel like you're overheating. So people will literally like start taking their clothes off because they feel super hot, but and because you're not thinking correctly or clearly, you'll disrobe, you'll undress, and you just end up killing yourself faster, but you just feel extremely hot. So that's another explanation, is that maybe they even took their own clothes off willingly because they were so cold.
I wonder if it's kind of like that. Like, I don't know what hypothermia feels like, obviously, but I wonder if it's similar to like how ice is so cold it could burn. Like,
Mm.
there are things you can touch that are just so, so, so cold, and then once your skin touches it, it's like it actually like burns you.
Yeah,
And
like our
so,
our brain only has certain ways to tell you something's wrong, and yeah,
exactly.
it might not even make sense.
Yeah, so like imagine that, but like throughout your whole body and like internally. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I can see why they would want to like strip off if
yeah.
that's how they felt.
Yeah, and they say that if an avalanche did occur, then it's possible that some of the like blunt force trauma, essentially, that's on some of the bodies, like it makes sense that it could have happened because of the avalanche.
Yeah, there's actually a Swedish avalanche scientist. His name is Johan Guame. I don't know how to pronounce that last name, but he was impressed by the snow modeling software developed by Pixar for their Frozen movie, and he asked if he could use their software to help model his hypothesis. And then he also coupled that with some cadaver tests from General Motors back in the 1970s, which helped them see how human bodies reacted to different speeds. And so, with that type of information, they were able to show that heavy blocks of snow that landed on the hikers as when they were sleeping was able to cause serious injuries that aren't usually associated with avalanches. So it definitely helped, I guess, the whole avalanche hypothesis that yes, it's powerful enough to be able to cause all of this blunt force trauma that you usually wouldn't see thanks to Frozen.
Yeah. So the avalanche theory is kind of the most simplest, and it has a lot explained, and I think coupled, so if you think avalanche coupled with poor visibility, coupled with freezing conditions, maybe something like this could have happened. But there's another big theory. The reason why I even heard about Dyatlov Pass is aliens.
Yay,
So
hooray! Hooray for the aliens.
so why is the alien theory popular and why does it exist? Well, there were some lights in the sky that were spotted by, as Corey mentioned earlier, a group of students who were also hiking in the area. And there was also, I think some of the like Mansi villages, they also reported that they saw what they described as like blue orbs with halos.
Yeah, I've also heard them referring to as fireballs in the sky.
Yeah. So there was something in the sky on the 1st or 2nd of February. I think they said that they were even seeing it through March. So there was something in the area going on. And the other thing is that there was fire damage on the tops of the tree line, which people speculate was the aliens potentially like using laser beams or something.
Or their UFO just passing by.
Yeah, or their UFO went low, but from what I heard, from what I read, it was just like not it was in particular areas. It wasn't like the whole thing was on fire. It was like
Mm,
specific points had burned of the trees.
hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I think also if there were aliens, it would explain why they exited the tent in a hurry because like Doroshenko, he reportedly on a different hike he scared off like a bear by himself. So these are like tough guys. I feel like there's not a lot that would scare them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think seeing an alien in the sky would definitely scare me. I'm pretty sure it would scare them.
Do you
So,
think they like? Do you think they saw it, or do you think they heard it? Because it's just like they're. It seems like they were in their tent if they cut it open, and like maybe
so
something was trying to enter their tent. Because why would they leave, right? If there's danger outside.
yeah, so I read like that two of the hikers were kind of better dressed and that potentially they had actually been outside the tent. I don't remember who it was. I think one of them was Simon though. So he was outside the tent. He even had his camera on him. So there's speculation that they were outside the tent, maybe using the restroom and taking photos of like the night sky, that maybe they saw something. Because I saw some like close-ups of his photos, and you can see what looks like weird figures, like lights, but they're tiny. It's like close-ups of his photos. So you can't see what it is, but there's pictures of bright stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think they even said that those were like one of the last photos taken on the camera. Like it was just like a kind of like an unfocused, blurry-ish, but it was coming from a light source out in the
Yeah.
night sky. So it's just like, what was it?
Right. What would make him like I don't think it would be a star would make him if he's like a hiker. Like for me, I would take a picture of the stars now, but that's because there's so much light pollution, I never see stars. And at this time, like I think it would have been a normal thing for them to see normal lights in the sky. But if he saw something strange, then maybe that would have made him pull his camera out and try to take a picture.
Yeah. Plus, it's like it probably had to have been something unusual because if he was just taking random pictures of the night sky, I feel like we would have seen that in his photo album. Like he would have already been taking like random night sky pictures, and like why all of a sudden now he decides to do it,
Yeah.
and that being the last photo.
Yeah. And then so there were these unexplained lights, and the light theory sometimes plays a part in the KGB theory. People say that like maybe there was test missiles being
Hmm.
launched,
Yeah.
but there's no evidence of like explode an explosion happening near the campsite. And also, I mean, we're talking about the KGB, but there's no records of anything being launched at that time. So,
Yeah, I think there was also speculation that the burnt part of the tree could have been like, some type of secret military bombs that they were testing, which is why we have unusual burnt marks in particular areas.
yeah.
But also one of the lead investigators who was in charge of the Dyatlov task investigation has stated that he was told by a member of the Soviet Congress to take out any details that mentioned fireballs or UFOs. So it's
Oh,
just like that's interesting. Like why
hide it.
omit? Yeah, like why omit those particular details?
Yeah.
Like what are they trying to hide? Like is it because they're trying to make the civilians feel as if there aren't alien intervention or fire? I can see the fireball omission, like if the KGB was testing out secret like military bombs, but why
Yeah.
the UFO part?
Yeah, I know people. So there's like, some mysteries, missing cameras, radioactive clothes. Why did they leave in such a hurry? Why did they not come back? But like one of the things that I think that makes people wonder who knew, like somebody knew that something happened, was the fact that when the rescue team came, they had radiation detectors. So I don't know if that's just because it was the Cold War that you're expecting everything to be nuclear, but yeah, if you're out there as a search party, why are you going to be worrying about radiation?
Mhm. I actually want to like I don't know what search party protocol is like nowadays. Is that common to like what is the kit for search parties? Like what are they bringing
I
with
have no
them?
idea. I assume you got to have first aid stuff in case you find a survivor. You have
Yeah.
to probably use search dogs. I know there were a couple dogs on the team,
Mhm.
but I mean, if you're there and you're expecting a body, I don't think you're looking for radiation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it also if we it is in a time when radiation was a lot more common than
Yeah,
nowadays.
that's true.
Should we talk about the
Yeah.
stove?
Yeah, the stove is interesting.
So there is something we call it the stove theory, where you can even see in some of the pictures that they've taken that there's like an exhaust pipe coming out of one of the tents, and that's because Igor, who is the leader of the team, he actually had a homemade stove that he made, and they were saying that it was definitely used during out the trip because they found like fried pieces of ham and fried pieces of meat. So like the only way they could have done that is by using a stove. And there's even a picture of one of the hikers sporting like their jacket and it looks badly burnt and ripped. So we don't know actually if it is due to the stove or like how it got that burnt, but a lot of people are pointing out that if the stove somehow malfunctioned while in the camp, it probably emitted like a lot of smoke, and they had to quickly cut open the tent from the inside to release all of that smoke. And so a lot of people are, and there was even burnt marks found on the bodies. So a lot of people are trying to say that it probably is the reason that made them evacuate their campsite quickly if there was a malfunctioning stove.
Yeah, and okay, so the malfunctioning stove would explain if they had to evacuate the area, and if you inhale a lot of smoke, that does cause like lung damage, which I think somebody did have.
Mhm.
So it has some merit in that it could explain some things,
But they were,
but
I mean, even four of the bodies were found intoxicated when they died. So it's just
oh,
like
that's true.
I think in combination to everything that like if you're intoxicated, suddenly your stove starts malfunctioning, you guys panic, and then boom, like you destroyed your campsite or something, and you guys have to leave, and then you don't have sound judgment in what to do after because you're not in the right mindset. I
Yeah.
feel like, I mean, I'm not saying this is like the theory that I'm most for. I feel like it's pretty plausible that is what happened.
Yeah. I think that with So there's the avalanche theory. An avalanche happened and they were forced out of the tent and some people got hurt. And then they went to the tree line, at least a number of them, enough of them that they had a fire. And based off of the bodies, if you had to say what happened, like let's say everyone evacuated to the tree line, they all made it there, what happened?
Hmm.
If we were going avalanche theory, since that's what the science wants to say. What do you think?
If we're going with avalanche theory, I believe that the two Yuris who were found at the makeshift campfire were left behind by the two groups who split apart, like the ones who were found going towards the tent and then the other ones found further away from the tent. I feel like they were left behind. Maybe, they were told to stay just in case anybody wanted to come back. And, like, this is where the campfire is. So stay here while I think the group that went towards the tent were trying to find their way to get supplies or to get, I don't know what they left behind. I mean, they definitely left behind, like, food. So they could have gone back for food. But they didn't make it. Sadly, they probably lost sight. Like, those weather conditions probably made it impossible to really see where you were going to. All you would see is snow everywhere. So they probably just kept on going, and then they definitely knew they weren't gonna make it, so they just died on the spot. Whereas the last group of people who had like the most traumatic deaths, with like the broken ribs, the missing eyeballs, the missing tongue, I feel like because they were found at the bottom of like a ridge, that there was like they could have caused a second avalanche while they were, I believe they were scavenging or trying to go get help or something. I don't know how far away. I mean, Igor did say in his last journal that they were like hundreds of kilometers away from any civilization, so maybe they weren't going to find help, but like possibly supplies. That they caused a second avalanche that, again, could have caused those injuries or furthered their injuries, and then scavengers came and took the soft tissues away from them. So like the missing eyeballs and the missing tongue might have been scavengers. That's what I believe.
Yeah, upon you telling your theory right now, I think the only problem that I have with that is that yes, they were hundreds of kilometers away. They were all aware of how far they were away from anyone who could help them, unless they stumbled upon like a Mansi person who was out there hunting, because this was hunting ground.
Yeah.
But what would possess them? Four of them, like the best dressed ones, presumably they were the last alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would make them decide to go away from the tent? Like, what could they have been looking for out there if they were in the middle of nowhere?
Mm.
I don't know. Like, I think a second avalanche probably did kill them, but I don't know why they would have been there, I guess is my question.
Do you think that now that I'm thinking about it more, that actually it was six of them who were left behind, and like the group who was going towards the tent had like gone back for supplies, right? And then they never made it back. So you're left with the two Yuris and then the four hikers who later were found with the traumatic deaths. And then they were like, oh, in case the group comes back from the tent, you, the two Yuris, please stay here while we go. I guess I can't really explain why they would leave unless the
Yeah.
two Yuris died before them and they're just like, shit, like we just gotta go.
And that had to have occurred because the two Yuris that were left behind they had
The
no
least
clothes
dressed,
other than their
yeah.
underwear. So they had to have torn that clothes off, taken it. So they were
Mm.
abandoning already dead friends.
Mm.
So why would they go that way? And then the other three that were going back to the tent, one of them was badly injured. I think skull fracture. So maybe they were going back trying to help that friend,
Mm.
but and then they just succumbed to hypothermia. I read that the autopsy determined that they had eaten 6 to 8 hours before their deaths. So I don't know how long they were alive for because we don't know when they had dinner.
Mm.
But like, how long were they out there for? that like they did, less than a mile, they succumbed to their death from their tent. So it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's crazy that they were so close and yet also scattered, and their deaths were violent and
Yeah.
were long, I guess, like suffering. So,
Yeah, that is crazy. And I'd like to add, like, maybe the guy with the skull fracture who was found going back towards the tent, like, I feel like sometimes when you get injuries, you don't know how bad it is. Like, you're not aware that your skull is fractured. You like maybe you feel like a deep like headache or something. Like that's like the symptom of getting your skull fractured, but
yeah,
you literally don't know. And so yeah, like I feel like they just kind of sense whoever to go back to the tent. And then
that's
the
true.
last remaining people were like, shit, like the two Yuris died of hypothermia. And like literally you're just a sitting duck if you're gonna just stay there. So maybe they tried their best to do something, yet it ended up with them being dead.
Yeah. It just seems to me like they would have been better off if they all just stayed by the campfire, huddled, trying to, just hold out to the morning. But that's not what
Yeah, we're
happened,
not.
which makes me think there had to have been something else there.
I mean, it's hard because we're not survivalists, so it's like maybe that is rule number one: don't just sit there huddled up. Like that just leads to certain death, which I mean, kind of makes sense, right? Like if we're just gonna sit huddled up in a group, I feel like to us it might sound because we're weak, like we need each other to survive. But I feel like at the same time, you don't get anywhere by sitting there huddled up, right?
Well, all you need
Unless you're
is the
waiting for
four
a
man's
search party.
blanket, which is the sun. You just need to wait until the sun comes up so you can find your tent. Like
Kelsey,
that's what
by
it
the time
was.
the sun comes up, we'd be frozen to death.
But that's why you're huddled together by a fire. Like obviously they still froze to death. They all had a hypothermia except for three.
I feel like it's not enough. Like I feel like no matter what, like with the supplies they had, with the fire that they got, with the sun, you're still gonna succumb to hypothermia at that rate.
Yeah.
There's not enough to keep
That's true.
you
Maybe that's
alive.
what they saw. We are in a dire position, and some of us need to go find the tent, and they went to try to go find the tent, and they didn't make it back. And then the other two just did succumb to hypothermia while the first three were trying to go back. And then the other four panicked and took the clothes off of their dead companions, but they went the other way. I don't know why. And there wasn't a freak avalanche and they just had bad luck. Like maybe that's what it was.
Maybe they went the other way just because like they weren't in the right mindset. Like I'm diabetic, and when I get low blood sugar and I'm like dying of hunger, I become an animal. Like I really like all I think of is food. Like one time it was really late at night. I had It's dangerous for diabetics to be asleep while they have low blood sugar because they don't realize it, right? And so basically I woke up in like a pool of sweat, and then I just like was like food, food, food. So I just like flew down the stairs. I don't even know how. Like I was not conscious of my actions. I just flew down the stairs, ripped open. Well, I basically cried because I couldn't open a bag of goldfish, and I knew this was good. What was gonna save me? But I eventually got it open, and I just like handfuls of goldfish in my mouth. I don't even like, and then slowly I came back to it. And that's just me in my house as a diabetic. And I feel like if you're out in the wilderness, let's say an avalanche did occur, you don't have any supplies, you know death is coming for you, it's super cold out there. I feel like you're just gonna do whatever. Like you're gonna do things that you wouldn't usually do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't say what I would do because I definitely cannot be capable of surviving even a level 1 hike, I don't think. So
Me neither.
so yeah, it's just like definitely I think definitely that it was a tragedy. I still think that it's possible that there was some force there that was keeping them and that didn't allow them back to the tents. I don't know if that force just is poor visibility or if it's aliens or if it's KGB making them die of hypothermia while they chill by the fire. I don't know, but This one, I don't, what would you say? Do you think the possibility of aliens, if you had to, what percentage would you put it at?
I would put it at a pretty low percentage just because, yeah, like there were, UFO reports around the time from other people around in the same area. But the thing is, UFO reports, like, you don't know what it is. Like, somebody could have set out a firecracker and you're like, a light in the sky. I don't know what that is. UFO? So, I don't know if I would put aliens. I feel like I would put KGB involvement above UFO involvement. But I still, I guess, put Avalanche as my top. Like, I think it
Yeah,
was a force of Mother Nature that killed them.
yeah, I agree. I think maybe it was multiple things of Mother Nature, but I think it was just something crazy happened that they weren't expecting. And even though they had all their experience of being out there, they didn't realize how steep the slope was. They didn't like they wanted to just instead of having to go back to the tree line, they wanted to start in the morning where they had left off, and they didn't think it was going to be a problem because the area seemed safe. So they just had bad luck, I think, that day.
I mean, it's really hard to even, like, with all the evidence that's given, it's really hard to say they were all even connected, right? Like, what if a couple of days before, the incident, they had to have opened the tent due to the stove being on fire, but it didn't. It's not, I guess, a connection to them and this avalanche. And yeah, so I don't know. Like, I feel
That's
like all the
true.
evidence given, it's hard to say this correlates to their deaths.
Or happened that night, yeah. Yeah, if I had to put my theories in order, I would say I think it was probably like 85% chance that it was an avalanche, 10% chance it was KGB, although maybe I would put the higher, I don't know. And then probably like 5% chance that it was aliens. And I don't think it was a Yeti at all.
Zero, obviously, if you did the math, 0% to the Yetis.
Yeah, so I think that's all I have for today's episode. No, actually, I do have a story, a newspaper story, I guess, an article that a listener brought to my attention in my Twitter DMs. That listener was KJ. I know that you also were alerted of this story by a friend. I don't know if you want to anonymize them or if you just want to acknowledge them right now.
It was just a coworker. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Shout out to KJ. Shout out to the coworker. Thank you. I think it's just an interesting thing that has is in the news right now that has to do with aliens. So it's an art. I found it. I was alerted to it as an article from the American Institute of Physics. So I saw it on phys.org, which is a pro science credible publication. I think you were forwarded a Daily Mail,
Hmm.
but I mean, yeah. So you could find it on different places. The one on phys.org was published on February 6th. So basically, the longest serving chair to the Harvard Astronomy Department, Lodum Loeb, claims that the Earth has been visited by aliens. Obviously, I think people's initial thoughts are going to be like, who the hell is this guy? Lodum Loeb. But he does have some credentials. He's published hundreds of papers. Like I mentioned earlier, he worked at Harvard for a long time, and he has collaborations with very famous people like Stephen Hawking.
So
So,
he's popping.
yeah, he seems like a legitimate astronomer. So what they claim in the article is kind of old news. In October 2017, astronomers observed an object heading toward our sun. They know it wasn't a rock because when it slingshotted around, it deviated from the projected course and it increased speed. The deviating force is currently a mystery because the explanations that we have or would have were not seen. So if it was caused by gas, we didn't see gas. If it was caused by it losing debris and that gave it a push, we didn't see debris. So it also appeared to be tumbling in a strange pattern, and it was very bright as if it was composed of metals. And to explain the phenomenon, Scientists had to literally invent new theories, like hydrogen gas was propelling it, so there would be no like trails, or that the gas disintegrated into dust, and so we didn't see that because it was dust and not like I guess a trail. And as far as the strange tumbling pattern, there's only two shapes that they have simulated could have resulted in that. And the first shape is a very familiar shape to us in the alien community. And that's that it had to have been shaped as that long, thin like cigar. And the other shape, which actually sadly is the more likely one, is that it's a flat, razor thin round pancake. So they say it's more likely it was the round pancake. So this guy, Lodum Loeb, he says that before encountering the sun, the object was at rest, which we don't typically see static objects in space, I guess. I learned this. Most things are moving, at least very slowly, if not fast. And the likelihood of anything being like that, I don't know, it's just like astronomically low. So what they theorize is that our solar system actually came like it slammed into this object, and then that propelled it forward, and then it went around our sun, and then it took off in whatever direction it was not supposed to go in. And Loeb speculates that he thinks it was a tripwire left behind by aliens, and that he says it's the simplest explanation for what the hell it was. Like, we can't be making up new theories. He thinks somebody left it behind to alert them, some kind of alarm. I don't know. I guess when I read this, I was just like, okay, I have two questions. Why would they leave it there? And where did it go to?
Mm, yeah. Or like even what was its I mean, yeah, what is purpose tied into why did they leave it there?
Yeah.
It's like what was its purpose? Like why did it circle around the sun and boom, it's gone? Like it seemed like it didn't do anything, but it must have done something.
Yeah, I mean, like it gets slammed into maybe, and then it just takes time to boot up. What if they have like advanced technology? So it's like, okay, it has to warm up around the sun, and
Ooh.
then it gets its energy, and then, or what if like there were aliens inside cryogenically sleeping, and then yeah, so they get close to the sun, they wake up, and then they're able to power their spaceship, and they take off.
Oh hell no.
Like I don't know what could happen. But yeah, so
Yeah.
this is, aliens in the news just
Yes.
this month in February 2021.
So it's like technically an update because I've definitely heard about this like years ago. About like
Yes.
I think when they first knew about it, but they
Yeah.
didn't know much about
In
it.
2017. Yeah. Yeah, actually, if anyone's aware, they were calling it the Oumuamua asteroid or rock. We didn't know that it was there until we saw it leaving.
That's so weird. Like that should convert.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the story.
Well, that's definitely interesting. Stay
Yeah.
aware, everybody. There is probably a lot more things like that out there.
Exactly. Like, we don't even know. We just happen to see it leaving. All right. So that concludes episode 5, the Dyatlov Pass incident. Hope you guys learned something new. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to check out our Instagram, Uncontroversial Facts Only. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Send us things. Follow, like, subscribe. And until next time.
Yeah, we'll see you in episode 6.